I'm Cheryl Ann Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for those of us who still dare to want it all, who have big dreams and bold ambitions. I think we deserve to have a big, full life and the freedom to enjoy it. So let's design our next chapter together for brilliance, not burnout. Each week, I'll bring ideas, insight, and a fresh perspective to keep you growing into a life that feels as good as it looks. Brilliant Balance, your life, your way. Now let's get started. This is episode 402 of the Brilliant Balance podcast, the surprising truth about why we do it all. So listen, if you have ever said, look, this is just easier if I do it myself, this episode is for you. And I'm willing to bet that you are not the only listener who is nodding her head vigorously when I ask that question. In fact, I would admit that I am also someone who has often in my life said, oh my gosh, I'm just going to do this myself. I remember when I had young kids, this one vacation very vividly, that we were getting ready to leave on vacation during the summer. We were taking everybody on a trip. We're going to be gone at least a week. And I had 3 kids who were old enough to dress themselves, but definitely not old enough to choose outfits or pack a suitcase. So I had spent days and days leading up to this trip, just packing the bags meticulously, making lists, triple checking flight times, packing snacks for every leg of the potential, delays that we might encounter along the way, having activities ready, looking at weather apps, doing all the things. And I suspect that someone might have looked at this and said, oh, she's being a great mom. Look at how she's taking care of her family with all of this. But in reality, I think what I was being was a control freak. And I was definitely exhausted way before we ever got to take off. I thought I was being dependable, but in retrospect, I think what I was showing was a complete lack of trust in my husband, in myself, in my ability to manage things as they came up. And so that's really one of the stories ringing through my mind, maybe because as I'm recording this, it's summer and I know a lot of people are heading out on vacations, maybe because my kids are getting older and I'm spending an awful lot of time on memory lane. But I know that memory of really almost ruining the vacation because I was so stressed out about having done all of these things with the best of intentions, by the way, to try to protect everyone and get us ready for the trip really was affecting my ability to relax and have a good time. And if that is your story, then I think you're going to find some really helpful ideas in today's episode because control is really what's at the root of that story. What was at the root of that story for me was a strong desire to remain in control, to be the person who had it all together, to make sure that my family was well taken care of. And the reality is that control really looks a lot like responsibility, like being responsible, until it doesn't. And I think as women, we are really socialized to equate control with responsibility. It's like the more we manage things, the more responsible we seem. Maybe even the more together we seem. And from a very early age, I think we're conditioned socially to be like mommy's little helper, right? Or the teacher's helper. We want to be the line leader. We want to be the person who's second in command. And we get a lot of praise and a lot of encouragement for being somebody that is willing to take on a lot of responsibility. So we become the chief everything officer in our home life, in our work lives, in our organizations, even in our communities. We really continue to step up to the plate and say that we will take responsibility, right? Put me in, coach, I'm ready to play. I see it all the time with clients who insist on managing every single task at work and at home, right? They do every single thing themselves and wear it like a badge of honor until burnout hits. And what's really underneath that is really a level of fear that I'm going to get into in this episode, that inability to trust others because we are so interested in being in control. Now, there is a kind of well-proven psychological insight sitting at the root of this, which is the locus of control theory. Okay, so I teach this when I am trying to help women move out of having a victim mindset where they are feeling like they're a victim of their own lives, like things are happening to them and not that they don't have any control. And when we are able to move our locus of control to be internal instead of external, it can be very powerful. This theory was originally developed in the 1950s by Julian Rotter. It's called the locus of control theory. And it really refers to a person's belief system about what causes the outcomes in their life. So think about it. If you have an internal locus of control, then you believe that you are primarily responsible for your success, your failure. It's kind of the, if I work really hard, everything will work out, right? That's like the theory. Conversely, people who have an external locus of control, they believe that outcomes are mostly due to things beyond their control. It's like, it's what's happening out there. So fate or luck or other people. And their kind of governing philosophy is really more like, no matter what I do, it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter what I do because things are going to happen to me. Now, you can see how at the edges of these two, there is some potentially destructive thought patterns, right? If we think we're in charge of everything or we think we're in charge of nothing, neither one of those is ideal. So many, many women in my audience have a very strong internal locus of control. And it's not a bad thing at its core. In fact, it's part of what made us like top students and excellent professionals and really reliable moms and partners. It's honestly, I think it's why we believe that we can change our lives if we just work hard enough, and therefore why we're willing to work so hard. But here's the kicker. When your internal locus of control becomes overdeveloped, like I was pointing on that spectrum, it starts to morph into hyper control. And hyper control is the belief that everything depends on you. And if you don't do it, it won't get done right. And that might be more resonant with you than you would like to admit. Okay, that overactive internal locus can lead to things like micromanagement. So if you have ever been accused of or given the feedback that you are micromanaging people, either at work or at home, it can be rooted in this hyper-developed internal locus, right? Burnout. Burnout is really at its root the exhaustion that comes from carrying everything ourselves. And of course, if we think it's all up to us, we are going to carry everything ourselves. I think that overactive internal locus can lead to really strained relationships because, candidly, other people just do not feel like we trust them. And they don't feel very empowered, and they don't feel like they have any control if we are busy taking all the control. And that can chip away at or really, really agitate relationships. And I think it also can lead to a lot of anxiety and guilt if things don't go right. Because if we think everything is up to us, then we also think everything is our fault, right? So if we're not doing it right, it's our fault. If it doesn't go well, it's our fault. And I think that the combination of that over time is like sort of like gripping the steering wheel too tightly. I call it white knuckling it. And we're just holding on for dear life, and we really can no longer enjoy the ride. And so while I think that at its origin, this idea of taking responsibility or being responsible, right? Having a strong internal locus of control can be good. We don't want to flip it into hyper control, okay? Because the growth edge for us is really about balancing that desire for control with trust. We want to balance a really healthy sense of personal agency, the belief that we can, in fact, influence the outcomes of things. We can do things. We want to balance that with the ability to trust others and to trust the process, just the process of life unfolding around us. And that is sometimes easier said than done, isn't it? Because I think that control, at least in my case, and many, many of the women I've coached, control has become our like coping mechanism for distrust. It's how we handle low trust levels, like of others, of systems that might fail, even just kind of life itself. So it's a self-protective collection of actions where like, if I just hold everything in my hands, then nothing can fall. So I don't know how that's landing with you. I think it's not a very comfortable thought to have about ourselves. Nobody really likes to think of themselves as over-controlled or hyper-controlled. But I am curious, I want you to kind of drop in for a second to your own inner knowing. And let me ask you, what might you not trust, right? Or who might you not trust? Who comes to mind when I ask that question? Do you think about your partner? Do you think about people on your team? Do you think about your children, their ability to rise to the occasion and handle things? Do you think about yourself? Maybe you don't trust your own ability to cope if things don't go perfectly. So you're trying to prevent them from not going perfectly. Some of us are really predisposed to low trust, and that can lead to this high control. Okay. Did you know that beyond hosting this podcast, I also directly support women leaders at the intersection of work and life? As a member of BOLD, you get direct access to me, the women on my team, and a peer group of exceptional women who are rewriting the rules and redefining what it means to have it all together. Go to brilliant-balance.com/bold to learn more and apply for your spot today. There's a couple of reasons, at least, there's probably many, there's a couple that come to mind that could be true. One of them, and this one's a really solid connection, is our own attachment history. What was our relationship like early on? The patterns that influenced our adult beliefs are shaped early on by our attachment history. I'm not going to get into all of the theory of attachment here. It would be long and I would be in over my head. So maybe I'll bring somebody in to talk about that. But our secure or not secure attachments to especially our parents and early caregivers really can affect our ability to trust others. Perfectionism, if you would self-identify as a perfectionist, there is a strong correlation with low trust in others and a high need for certainty if you feel like you are on that perfectionism scale. Okay. And so the reality is that whatever the cause, whatever might have caused us to have low trust and therefore to have developed these kind of controlling behaviors, the pathway to trust is transformative, right? And I want to talk about what trust actually looks like, because trust is not the same thing as blind faith. It's not just, taking our hands off the wheel and saying whatever happens, happens. There's a middle ground here that I think we can steer toward. And it is very important that we understand that trust is at its core not passive. Okay, trust is more about active surrender. There really is a consciousness to trust. It's not like we just close our eyes and hope everything works out. It's really choosing to believe in things that might be hard for you to believe, like people can rise to the occasion. Like imperfection is actually survivable. Like your worth is not in your output or how much you have controlled. Those can be radical ideas when you are starting on this journey. But I want to promise you that what's on the other side of this is a lot more freedom. If you can learn to let go of some of this over control and build more trust in others, in yourself, just in life, there's a lot of freedom waiting for you. So I want to give you 3 ideas today, 3 practices that you actually can start to apply right now, like today, to start to build this skill, to start to build more trust in others. And I think that I have been working on these. I think that it is really a journey, not something that you are going to just flip a switch and learn to adopt immediately. But my goodness, is there incredible freedom waiting for you if you can start to chip away at whatever has created that level of hyper control. So 3 practices. Okay. The first one, I'm going to call this micro delegation. I think a lot of people who have a high need for control struggle with delegation. We're worried about letting other people do things or even asking other people to do things. And this is kind of what I started the episode with, that belief that it's just easier to do it myself. It'll take me too long to give direction and train somebody and worry about, are they going to get it right? I'll just do it. And that is kind of a one-way ticket to a really full calendar and a side dose of burnout, right? It is not a great practice to do every single thing ourselves. So micro delegation is like finding small places, small tasks that we can delegate and do those often and really resist fixing them. Like, here's an example. Asking someone to go to the store without specifying exactly the brand and the size and the variety of something that you need them to buy, like at the grocery store, right? Just trusting that if they buy a different kind of peanut butter or mustard or bread, maybe you're actually going to discover something that you like just as well. Okay. Now, if you are like, who does that? Who tells them the exact thing? You might not be as hyper controlled as you think. Okay. Because there are plenty of people who are listening to this episode or in my coaching community that are like, who doesn't give the specific directions and also where to find it in the store? Right. So we want to start small micro delegation doses often and resist fixing the outcome, because this builds evidence for you that other people can handle responsibility, even if they don't do it exactly your way. You know that classic meme about there's two ways to load the dishwasher. There's kind of everyone else's way and the right way, right? Which is only your way. This is a great example of letting people try something their way, see if they can get an acceptable outcome. And that brings me to my second point, which is the second practice when we're trying to learn to build trust. I would call this embrace the 80% rule. Okay, the 80% rule is if they can do a task like 80% as well as you can, give them a shot. Let them try to do this task. Because that perfectionism that we're applying to tasks that just simply do not warrant that level of perfection, I don't know, like making the bed or back to loading the dishwasher, it's like a smokescreen for our own fear. We are just hiding behind that need for perfection because we are so afraid of what will happen if it is not flawless. Okay. And I promise you that done is better than perfect, especially when someone else is the one doing it. So if you want a shortcut to getting time back in your calendar and to being able to have more time to do the things that you actually want to do, micro delegation and the 80% rule you're going to be most of the way there. Okay. The third practice might be the hardest. Of the three that I'm going to share today, I believe it is the hardest. And the third practice is to sit with the discomfort without intervening. Okay, when someone drops the ball or they fumble or they just get it wrong, pausing before you step in to fix it or criticize it or change it is everything. Sitting with that discomfort stretches your capacity to tolerate imperfection, and it strengthens their capacity to recover and to improve. Think about it. If they believe that you are going to rush in 1 second after they take a swing at this and you're going to fix it, adjust it, make it your own, do it your way, criticize them, do they have an incentive to really try to get it right? No. Do they have an incentive to even evaluate their own effort and say, like, is this good enough? Could this be better? Also, no, because they know you're going to swoop in and just handle it. But if you take your hands off the wheel and say, you are in charge, not only of doing the thing, but of the outcome, including the natural consequences of that action. Okay. Maybe even practicing like, can I wait 24 hours before I intervene and try to fix this? These are ways that you can start to increase flexibility and really give yourself some space to let other people in as you are building trust. And I'm going to tell you, friends, every single time you loosen your grip on control, you open up a space for trust to grow. And trust is what makes life feel lighter and fuller and like more connected. I think I shared this in a podcast a while back that I had a phrase just burned into my brain about a year or two ago that was connection over perfection. And I really had to tell myself over and over again, almost as a mantra, that I cared more about the connection with the other people involved than I did about how perfect the outcome was. So letting go of some control around outcomes allowed me to increase the connection with the people in my life, right? Just choosing tasks that I typically overmanaged and letting myself hand them off to, my husband or my kids without interference. Giving my team opportunities to do things that I normally would say, let me take a look at that before it goes out, and saying, nope, not going to take a look at it. I trust you to do it. It's going to be fine. And only intervening if I really was going to die on my sword over something going out that was not to my standard or not something I would have done. So I'm going to issue that same challenge to you this week. I want you to think about, what is a task that you typically overmanage? What is something in your life? Maybe you have lots of them. Maybe you can just think of one or two. And can you challenge yourself to let go of that particular task and hand it off to whoever makes the most sense? Could be your partner, could be one of your kids, it could be somebody on your team at work that can handle this task on behalf of your family or on behalf of your company, and you don't interfere. And I want you to reflect on, after you've done this, what came up for you. What worked? What didn't work? What was hard about it? Was it easier than you thought? Especially, was the result really that different? This is like such a silly example, but recently my husband had gone to the grocery store to pick up a few things midweek, and he picked up a different brand of bread than what we normally would have bought. And I will admit, my first thought was like, oh, this is not the right bread. And I would promise myself I wasn't going to say anything about this. And so we open the bread, we're eating this bread, and lo and behold, I bet you can guess where this is going. By far, the brand he brought home, much better than the one that I had been buying dutifully and on autopilot for a very long time. So the other kind of hidden benefit in this trust exercise is that sometimes life has the opportunity to surprise you, and it goes better than you thought. There is actually a better way of doing something that you would not have found if you continued to stay fully in control, so tightly controlled. So I want you to DM me or comment on this episode, but DMing me is the easiest. I'm on Instagram at cschoolnikki. What is the area that you're ready to loosen the reins a little bit, that you're going to practice trust instead of control? There is this strong inverse relationship that you're going to find the more you work to increase trust and to give yourself opportunities to test it, the easier it's going to be to let go of control in some places. And it is going to be magical in the way that it opens up space and freedom in your life. Okay, pass this episode along to a friend who you know needs it. That is all for today, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.